Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding to me. My colleagues, there are only bad choices left in Syria and Iraq. But in my opinion, the worst choice of all would be to do nothing. This is an attempt to do something. I want to commend Chairman McKeon. I rise in strong support of the McKeon Amendment, which would authorize a train and equip mission for the vetted, moderate Syrian opposition. Again, the worst choice would be to do nothing. This is an attempt to do something. It's urgent that we do it now. Every day we wait is a day longer. ISIS gets stronger, and the opposition gets weaker. Now, I think it should be plainly stated that this is a separate issue from an AUMF. This is separate. This is talking about aiding and abetting the vetted Syrian opposition. Now, I was in favor of doing this 2 years ago. For 2 years, I've been working to assist the moderate opposition. In early 2013, I introduced the Free Syria Act to provide the Syrian opposition with the weapons they need to fight the Syrian regime and the extremists that now control large parts of Syria and Iraq. So this is authorizing a train and equip mission for the vetted, moderate Syrian opposition. It isn't perfect, but it's a step forward, and it's far, far better than doing nothing. Since I introduced that legislation, the situation in Syria has gotten much worse. More than 200,000 people have died, and millions have been driven from their homes. Now, it's impossible to know the answers to the what-if questions. What if we had trained the moderate opposition 2 years ago? What if they had been able to hold territory against Assad and ISIS? What if and what if? We have to deal with what we have now. What might have been, no one will ever know. Right now, this is a very, very important thing for us to do. I understand that my colleagues are war-weary. I'm war-weary. I understand the American people are war-weary. I'm war-weary. But again, I think doing nothing would invite something very similar that happened to my city, New York City, on that fateful day of September 11th, 2001. You know, we kicked the Russians, or the world kicked the Russians, out of Afghanistan when that happened. And so what happened was we took our eye off the prize. And so we allowed Afghanistan to become a safe haven. We allowed the Taliban to welcome in al-Qaeda. And al-Qaeda had a safe haven to plot and plan attacks against the U.S. homeland. That is replicating itself right now in Syria and in Iraq. And if we do nothing, ISIS will plot and plan, and we will have many more September 11ths in the United States, in Europe, in the Middle East. That's why this is in the national interest, the U.S. national interest, and it's something that we really need to do. The Foreign Affairs Committee held a hearing last month with the Syrian defector, Caesar, a military photographer who smuggled thousands of images out of Syria to demonstrate the atrocities of the Assad regime. The gruesome photographs of Christians and Muslims, men, women, and children starved, tortured, and killed by the regime demonstrate the true brutality of Assad and his cronies. Last month, the American people in the world woke up to the brutality of ISIS, which has beheaded 2 American journalists and murdered countless Christians and other minorities, and most recently beheaded someone from the United Kingdom. A self-financed terrorist group with highly trained fighters willing to die, ISIS represents an immediate threat to our interests and allies and, if left unchecked, the U.S. homeland. Terrorism, wherever it rears its ugly head, they're all the same. Whether it's ISIS or ISIL or Al-Qaeda or Hamas or Hezbollah, they're all terrorists. They all want to use terror to achieve their political goals. I see Assad and ISIS as 2 sides of the same coin. Fighting one must not empower the other. Only fighting Assad would allow ISIS to flourish, but only fighting ISIS would leave Assad in power. And he is the biggest magnet drawing foreign fighters to ISIS. Believe it or not, they have this symbiotic relationship from all around the globe. The crisis does not end unless the moderate opposition is empowered to show the Syrian people that they can fight and win, that they can fight ISIS and win, and later on they'll fight Assad and win. Through this strategy, the moderate opposition can gain leverage and create the conditions on the ground to compel a political solution. Now we have the opportunity to change course in Syria and the region. This authorization can give new hope to the Syrian people and to the people of the region that the United States will stand with them against terrorism. And like many of my colleagues, I've attended a number of briefings on these matters, and I've noticed a persistent theme. May I have an additional minute?
I yield an additional minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
I hope to correct this persistent theme. I've heard from some members that Syrian Christians would prefer to live under Assad than the moderate opposition. This is a complete mischaracterization, in my opinion, of a situation in Syria. Assad may profess to protect Christians, but in reality, he buys his oil from ISIS, thereby bankrolling them and their massacres of Christians. ISIS would not be able to fund their operations without the Assad regime. The moderate opposition has publicly stated their acceptance and tolerance of Christians, and the Syrian Christian community has welcomed the U.S. call to degrade and destroy ISIS terrorists and the efforts of moderate Syrians to defend their communities. So I understand the reticence of some of my colleagues to get involved. Again, we have no great choices here, but the worst choice is to do nothing. I want to again thank Congressman McKeon. Chairman Royce and I conduct the Foreign Affairs Committee in a very bipartisan fashion. We pride ourselves in being one of the most bipartisan committees. Foreign policy should be bipartisan. Issues like this should be bipartisan. I think we can all be proud to be members of Congress. This is being done in a bipartisan way. I certainly support this resolution. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.